wasn't supposed to be home that day. Business meetings in London, a full schedule, and a private jet waiting to take him across the ocean had all been cancelled because of a storm. Adrian Cole, a billionaire who owned half the city, decided to return home early. He thought he'd surprise his daughter with an unplanned visit. What he didn't expect was to find another man kneeling at her side in the driveway. Ella, his teenage daughter, stood on crutches, her yellow dress stained with dirt, her legs scraped and bleeding, and right in front of her, the janitor of his estate, Luis, was crouched down, carefully cleaning the wound with a cloth. For a moment, Adrian froze. His heart pounded as suspicion filled his mind. Why was this man touching his daughter? "Step away!" Adrian's voice cracked like a whip, sharp and cold. Luis lifted his hands, palms open in peace. The rag slipped from his fingers. Before Adrian could move closer, Ella's shaky voice cut through. "Dad, please stop. He's helping me." I fell and he caught me. It was in that instant that Adrian saw the first aid kit spread open, the antiseptic pads, and the care in Luis's eyes. His heart, still pounding, softened. He realized he had nearly mistaken kindness for harm. "Before I continue, I want to ask you something. If you were in Adrian's shoes, what would you have thought in that moment? Suspicion, anger, or gratitude? Share your answer in the comments. And if you believe in the power of compassion and second chances, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Whispers of Kindness. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Inside the mansion's kitchen, Luis continued treating Ella's wound while Adrian watched. It was strange for the wealthy businessman. He was used to doctors and private nurses, not a janitor with rough, calloused hands. Yet Luis worked with steady precision, apologizing each time Ella winced. "Where did you learn this?" Adrian finally asked. Luis gave a small smile. "I have a daughter too. She's 10, Sophia. Trouble follows her knees everywhere." That simple answer shook Adrian. He had never thought of the janitor as more than a uniform, a name on the payroll. But in that moment he saw him differently, not as an employee but as a father. Ella, sipping tea after her wound was cleaned, noticed the paint stains on Luis's shoes. He laughed, embarrassed. "Sophia and I built a papier-mâché volcano for school. It erupted too early, just like life sometimes." Even Ella laughed at that, a sound Adrian hadn't heard from her since the accident that had left her dependent on crutches. Months earlier, Ella's life had been shattered by a car crash caused by a drunk driver. She had been a horse-riding champion, fearless in the saddle, but since the accident, fear had kept her away from the stables. Adrian had buried his guilt in business trips, money, and silence. That day in the driveway, Luis had given her something Adrian hadn't managed to give: comfort. But challenges followed quickly. The first came when a careless security guard took a photo of Luis kneeling before Ella and spread it with a cruel caption. Within hours, gossip pages hinted at scandal. Adrian's publicist panicked, urging him to issue a cold statement. Instead, Adrian chose honesty. In a small press gathering, he stood beside Luis and said, "A man saved my daughter from worse injury and cared for her wound. If there is any scandal here, it's how quickly we assume the worst about those who serve us." Luis, shy but steady, added, "I did what any parent would do." The rumor dissolved. In its place bloomed respect. For the first time, Adrian realized that protecting his reputation was less important than standing beside truth. The second challenge was more personal. Over tea one afternoon, Luis admitted that his daughter Sophia had knee trouble. She needed surgery, but the waiting list was long, and the cost was far beyond what he could afford. Adrian offered to pay, but Luis shook his head. Pride ran deep. "I can't accept charity," he whispered. Adrian thought carefully. What if I use my position on the hospital board to speed up her appointment? No money involved, just time saved. Reluctantly, Luis agreed. But the hospital board resisted. They argued about fairness and appearances. Adrian, once the cold businessman, surprised even himself. He pledged to fund 10 additional surgeries for children in need if they would approve Sophia's case quickly. They finally agreed. The knot of bureaucracy was untied by generosity. The third challenge was Ella's fear. Though her leg healed, she refused to return to horse riding. Therapy sessions ended in tears and frustration. Adrian's words couldn't reach her, but Luis and Sophia could. When they joined one of her therapy games, laughter broke the wall of fear. Naming their fears aloud, math quizzes, dark rooms, falling again, turned the therapy into something playful. Slowly, Ella's courage returned. When Sophia's surgery day arrived, Luis's hands trembled with worry. Adrian sat beside him in the hospital waiting room, silent but supportive. For once, the billionaire's phone stayed off. He wasn't a CEO then. He was just a father, waiting with another father. The surgery was a success. Sophia recovered, her limp fading with each passing week. Inspired by her friend's bravery, Ella returned to the stable. The first time she mounted a horse again, she whispered the same trick Luis had taught her. Don't wait for 3. Move on 2. And she did. From then on, the two families became inseparable. Sunday breakfasts with pancakes, violin recitals in Adrian's sunroom, and driveway chalk drawings turned the cold mansion into a home filled with warmth. But Adrian wanted to do more. Standing once again in the same driveway where it all began, he told Luis, I've built companies, but I've forgotten the people who hold them together. I want to start a fund for workers and their families, real help in times of need, and I want you to help me design it. Luis laughed in disbelief. Me, I'm just a janitor. No, Adrian replied firmly. You're a father who understands dignity. That's the kind of wisdom money can't buy. Together they created the Yellow Dress Fund, named after the dress Ella wore that fateful day. The fund provided emergency support for employees' families, medical care, tuition, and urgent needs. It wasn't charity. It was dignity. And soon lives across the city quietly changed because of it. Months later, at a small gathering, Ella stood proudly in her yellow dress, no longer afraid. Sophia played her violin, the notes shaky but full of hope, and Adrian raised his glass, voice thick with emotion. I used to think wealth meant having more than enough. Now I know it means sharing enough, and having the humility to accept help when it's offered. That lesson came from a man I once thought I barely knew. The guests clapped. But for Adrian, the true applause was the laughter of his daughter and Sophia as they raced each other across the driveway, where fear had once lived. And so, what began as suspicion turned into a bond between two fathers, two daughters, and two worlds. The day Adrian came home early, he nearly misjudged a moment of kindness. Instead, he discovered something far richer than money, the power of compassion, dignity, and second chances. Before we close, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What part of this journey moved you the most? The driveway misunderstanding, the hospital struggle, or Ella's courage to ride again? Share your reflections in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Whispers of Kindness. Together we can spread more stories that remind us how kindness changes everything. Because in the end, wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch and the love we give.